Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mangs, and I welcome you guys to perhaps one of the most requested videos ever on my channel. Okay, maybe that's pushing it a little bit, but it is very frequently requested. And that is the official Advanced Wars 2 Dual Strike tier lists. That is something that a lot of you guys want to see, and considering the amount of views I have on my Advanced Wars 2 CO tier lists, well, it sort of speaks for itself, doesn't it? A lot of people want to see this shit, so I guess I'll bring it to you guys. The reason why I've held on so long doing it is because I didn't feel like I quite had the experience in player versus player combat when it came to Dual Strike. But over the past year, I have actually been playing a lot of Dual Strike with my friends, and I feel like I've gotten a little bit better understanding of the game as a whole. So unless you're unfamiliar with the concept of a tier list, it's basically a way to gauge the different power levels of the COs in the game, because if you have played Advanced Wars for even a little amount of time, you are probably familiar with the fact that this game is not balanced at all. The different COs have different strengths, and some of them are just vastly overpowered compared to others. So it can be kind of difficult to play against other humans, because if you don't have any understanding of how the different COs work, you can find yourself in a very imbalanced situation where you get absolutely steamrolled by a player that's worse than you simply because he picked a better CO. So by understanding the different tier levels of the COs, you can create more balanced matchups with your friends, and also you can give yourself a little bit of a handicap. If you, for example, know that you're a lot better than your friend, you can play a lower tiered CO, and maybe you'll have a good game together. It's sort of a way of giving yourself a handicap that's kind of nice. So yeah, now, of course, in Dual Strike, creating a tier list is very hard because there's a lot of variables that you have to take into account. The different COs, they get stronger and weaker depending on a lot of things. Like, for example, there's a lot of terrain-based COs in Dual Strike, COs that get stronger on certain terrain. And naturally, if they play on maps where their terrain is represented a lot, they become better. Like, for example, Jake, like you can see here, is a plane specialist, so naturally on a map without planes, he becomes weaker. Now, we also have COs like Javier, who become stronger based on comm towers. So it's kind of difficult to tier them sometimes, but I'll try to give the most accurate representation of their tier based on most of the games that you're normally playing with other human players, which tends to be maps where you play one versus one, and you have the same amount of properties, and there's a little bit of every terrain represented on the map. At least that's how I like to look at it. And in the examples where a CO varies a lot in terms of strength, I will point it out. Now, one thing that I will not be taking into account is skills. Like, this CO is good with this skill. I'll point it out if there's a skill that's very good for them, but that won't take, like, for example, I won't take into consideration that, whoa, Jake is really high tier because if you get the skill that makes him move on planes, he becomes very good. I won't take skills into account, and also it's very important to point out that this is in regard to player versus player combat. This is not based on how quickly you can clear the campaign or how quickly you can clear the war room. One of the most common misconceptions I get when on my one tier list video is like, hey Mangs, I think you're wrong because I played a match with the CO and I completely steamrolled the computer. It's like, yeah, of course you did, it's the fucking computer, it sucks, you know. In Dual Strike, of course, it's a lot better, but still, my point stands. So, and another thing that I won't be taking into account is different tag teams. Like, I know, for example, there are horrendously broken tag teams in Dual Strike, like, for example, Sami/Eagle, where you can basically use your power to move something like 3 times and cap the HQ from halfway across the map. That doesn't make Sammy or Eagle any stronger individually as COs in regards to their tier. That's just a good tag team. So I won't really be talking about tag teams or anything along those lines. I'll talk about their basic strengths on average and how that makes them worse or better. So, without further ado, without overcomplicating things too much, if you're still with me, we're going to start off with Jake. And I'm going to be showcasing all the different outfits as well. I think I'm actually going to do a different video where I show off all the different outfits, because I think that's actually something a lot of people would like to see. But for now, you'll get that in this video as well, so I guess I'll be double dipping in that regard. Anyway, Jake. Let's talk about Jake, but before I do that, let's talk about the different tiers, okay? So I've branched the COs into 5 different tiers. We have tier 1, which I call the balanced tier, tier 2, which I call the strong tier, tier 3, which I call the overpowered tier, and tier 4, which I call the broken tier, and lastly tier 5, which I simply refer to as the god tier. So yeah, Starting off with Jake, he is a tier 1 CO. He's in the balance tier. Now Jake, of course, he's a plane specialist. He gets better on planes, 10% to be exact. And he has a decent power and superpower. He basically gets increased movement on, he gets increased firepower on planes. And his vehicles gain increased range. He's got sort of like a mini grid power going on there, which is kind of nice. You know, his vehicles gain +1 range, which is a nice little bonus, and it can certainly take your opponent off guard if they fail to remember it. However, the big issue with Jake is that, naturally, his strength depends on the amount of plane that is available. If you play on a map where there's not a lot of planes, he naturally becomes weaker. And I guess you could make the argument that on a map that's covered in planes, or that there's a lot of planes available, Jake could be viewed as a tier 2 CO, perhaps. Now, the problem I have with planes is that planes only offers 1 defense star. It's not some place you want to stick most of your units. I always try to take cover on cities or in forests to gain the most defense possible. And when I play as Jake, I often find myself in a situation where I want to attack a unit, and I have the choice between attacking from a forest or a city or a plane. And if I attack from the plane tile, then I only have 10% defense. So I naturally want to attack from the city. But if I attack from the city, I won't get the firepower increase. But since it's only a 10% firepower increase, I often end up ditching the plane entirely, and I put my unit in a city. So that's why I kind of think Jake is a little bit problematic, because you don't really want to attack or end your turn on planes unless you have to. Naturally, if you're using your power or superpower, it becomes an entirely different deal, because then he gets a massive firepower increase and you want to attack from the planes. But I still feel like I'm sacrificing defense for offense by leaving my units out on the planes, which, again, I don't want them there. So for that reason alone, I consider Jake a tier 1 CO. His day-to-day is alright, and his powers are fine, but he really isn't that strong compared to the other COs in this game. He's completely average, and in Dual Strike, average means you're tier 1, because there's a lot of fucking strong COs in this game. Anyway, moving on to Rachel. Nell's overpowered little hot sister. Fucking hell, Rachel is broken as all fuck. She takes after her sister. However, unlike her sister, Rachel is a walking superpower. There is nothing special about this girl. She's a one-trick pony. Her day-to-day simply allows her to recover 1 hit point extra from properties that she owns. Basically 1 extra repair, which is garbage. I mean, you don't want to spend money on repairs anyway, so Rachel's day-to-day power actually works against her in some cases, as it drains more of her income on repairs, which is considered a bad thing, at least in my opinion. And I like to think I'm right in this regard. Her little power is terrible. It's a copy of Nell's little power. Never use it. It's just like the Devil Axe from Fire Emblem. Just don't use it. Although I tend to do it a lot, but that was a horrible example. Just disregard that. Anyway. So yeah, what you want to use with Rachel is her superpower. Her superpower is a freaking meteor strike on crack. Like, it is so fucking good. It fires 3 missiles. That is overpowered as shit. And if you've ever played a match against Rachel, whenever she pops that superpower, the advantage just tilts in her favor immediately. Like, Meteor Strike is an overpowered power to begin with, and Rachel basically has that. Yes, of course, it's split between 3 missiles, but that is actually a good thing, because with Meteor Strike, you kinda focus all the power in one place of the map, whereas the missiles are spread evenly across the enemy army. Now, of course, they have a bit of a pattern to them. I'm actually not 100% sure how they work, but I'm pretty sure how they work is that one of the missiles targets the biggest clump of enemy infantry, one of the missiles targets the biggest clump of enemy units, and the last missile targets the biggest, like, amount of cash that it can damage. So if it will pick a Neo tank over a bunch of infantry, for example. At least that's how I think they work. Don't quote me on that. There seem to be a lot of disagreements. But Rachel is broken as fuck. Did I say she was tier 3? I'm not sure if I said she was tier 3. I think I may have forgotten it, but she is tier 3, the overpowered tier for her. Sorry, I actually can't remember if I said it or not. But yeah, a tier 3 CO, she is absolutely horrendously broken. Her superpower is just way too fucking good. So yeah, just play her and spam her superpower and you'll be fine. Tier 3. Of course, then we come to her sister. Never really liked Nell's alternate outfit most towards Dual Strike, gotta say. She looks really weird. She's also tier 3. Now, In Advanced Wars 2, I rated her tier 4, and in hindsight, I think that I may have gone a little bit overboard with that. However, one of the reasons why I rate Nell as tier 3 in Dual Strike is because every CO has a much larger luck bonus in Advanced Wars Dual Strike. A much larger luck bonus. And Nell's day-to-day luck has actually stayed relatively the same. I think it's gone up slightly. But my point is that Nell's luck is no longer as unique as it used to be in Advanced Wars 2. It feels a lot less relevant because all the other COs have a much stronger day-to-day luck compared to what they used to have. Now, Nell's little power and superpower has of course remained the same. She still gains an absurd amount of luck and she can still almost one-shot Neotanks with infantry. But she is tier 3 now. She's the same tier as her sister Rachel. Still an incredibly strong CO due to her ability to just do hit point damage based on whoever she's attacking. Although it is affected by defense. So it is a little bit, you know, it's a little bit less broken than I first initially thought it was. Essentially how it works is that when you use Nell's little power, she can do anything between 0 to 60% extra damage in terms of raw percentage. So if your infantry would normally deal 55% damage, it could now deal 55 plus 60% damage, and then you subtract defense. And her superpower does the same thing, except it can go up all the way up to 100%. So theoretically, if you fight Neotanks on a road, your infantry can one-shot those Neotanks, which is pretty fucking overpowered. So yeah, Nell, it's tier 3 for her. Then we move on to Hachi. Hachi, oh my god, he's so fucking badass in his alternate uniform. Hachi is the only CO in the game that is in the tier 5 category, the god tier. Hachi is of course unchanged from Advanced Wars 2. He still gets the 10% discounts. His little power still puts that down to 50%, and his superpower still allows him to purchase units in, or land units in cities at a 50% discount. And he is as broken as ever. Now, this tier was shared with Sturm. Actually, Sturm was a little bit stronger than Hachi in terms of raw power in Advanced Wars 2. I played a lot of matches with my friends, Sturm versus Hachi, and it was a really close call, but Sturm always won out at the end. So, but since Sturm is no longer in the game, Hachi now sits on the throne, the tier 5 throne. He is unchallenged in this game. A lot of people that plays Dual Strike seems to think that he isn't that good, and I really just think they haven't played against a proper human, because honestly, if you think Hachi is bad, like, I even heard someone say that Hachi was weaker than fucking Funbolt. You guys have no fucking idea what you're talking about. Hachi is the undisputed best CO in the game, and honestly, if you don't know how strong a 50% discount is, you really should just not play this game. He is fucking overpowered. Anyway, moving down the lists, we come to the original Orange Star COs. It is Andy. Andy is still a tier 2 CO. He is in the strong tier. Andy is good, you know. He has no weaknesses, no day-to-day powers, and his little power is really crap. Kind of like Rachel, Andy is a walking superpower. Naturally, his hyper repair, 2 hit point restore sounds nice and all, and of course we have to remember that in Dual Strike you don't only get the 10% defense increase when you spam your power, you also get a 10% firepower increase. However, what you want to do with Andy is you want to spam hyper upgrade. The 5 hit point repair, the 20% firepower increase, 30% in this case, since we get an extra boost on top of that, as well as +1 movement to all your units, is absolutely insane. And how you want to play with Andy is you want to try and keep your units alive naturally. You want to move back, like, Andy is the only CO where you actually don't want to be using low hit point units as walls. Naturally, if I have a 3 hit point tank, in any other scenario, I'll use it to block a healthy one. But with Andy, I will actually pull this tank back to a forest and hide it until I can get my superpower, and then return as a 7 hit point tank to do some damage. So Andy's playstyle is very unique. You have to actually take care of your wounded units instead of sacrificing them. And by doing so, you can get a massive advantage. If you've played properly up until the point where you get your superpower can easily win you the game. Like that, boom. Andy's games are won and lost based on a good superpower or not. If you didn't manage to keep your units alive and you have no units to repair from your superpower, you will lose. If you did manage to keep them alive and you use your superpower, you will win. So, but again, he's a tier 2 CO. He's pretty strong. He can beat most of the tier 1 gangs, but he struggles against anyone else. Anyway. We are moving on to Max. Max is tier 1, borderline tier 0. They nerfed him even more in this game. Like, in Advanced Wars 2, he was still fucking weak, but in Dual Strike, he still only has a 20% firepower increase. And his power and superpower no longer grants him +1 movement. I don't know why they took that away from him, because he was pretty fucking weak in Advanced Wars 2 as well. Now, one thing they have given him is that his indirects no longer have reduced firepower, but they still have -1 range, so he's still fucking bad. You would never build artillery and rockets or max. It doesn't matter that their firepower isn't lowered. It's the range decrease that was always the issue for max, nothing else. And the fact that he can't use indirects, and you certainly won't build them as a human. If you fucking build artillery or rockets in a player versus player combat as max, you've already lost. It's no point, don't even try. The range will make them absolutely useless. But yeah, he's just fucking terrible. Like, sure, he can get a bit of momentum going with his power, but at least in Advanced Wars 2 he had the saving grace of having faster units when he used his power and superpower, which could add a lot of momentum to his charge. And he could actually, if Max got a decent superpower off, he could like blast the momentum in his favor and just overpower his opponent. Now he struggles doing that because he doesn't get the increased movement, which means his units won't get to where they need to be to do the most damage. So yeah, Max is awful. Fucking terrible. Then we come to Sami. Sami is still in her tier 3 overpowered tier. Sami, of course, works much like she used to in Dual Strike. In Advanced Wars 2. In that she still has her overpowered superpower that instantly allows her to capture properties. And Sami is just like... she's one of those CEOs that doesn't really suffer a massive drawback in the fact that she only has a 10% firepower decrease on her vehicles and air units, as well as her melee ships. The thing is, she doesn't have this penalty on her ranged units, so her artillery and rockets are fine. And what you do is essentially just set up a wall with mechs and infantry covered by rockets and artillery, and that's how you pretty much play until you get your superpower. You activate your superpower, and boom, you capture all the enemy properties, and you usually win just by disrupting their economy. And of course, Sami's mechs are a nightmare to behold. They are just so fucking goddamn cost-effective, especially when they get their +2 fucking movements. Her mechs can compete with your tanks, and that's just a trade that you won't win. And the problem with mechs is that they are only really countered by your infantry. You can't fight mechs with recons or anti-air. Yeah, sure, if you get the first strike off, you can take out maybe one or two mechs. But if the mechs get their first strike on your recon or anti-air, that's a really bad trade for you. So it's really difficult to fight against Sami. It's really fucking hard. You have to play a really solid game, and you have to sort of establish the win before she gets her superpower off. Or at least, if you play against Sami, you need to be good at blocking cities with your own units, because she will capture them if left unattended. So you have to place your infantry on your cities to guard them. And that pretty much means they can't be elsewhere and do other things. So it's a huge handicap for you. So yeah, Sami is tier 3, overpowered tier. Okay, let us move down to the Blue Moon CEOs. Is Olaf. Olaf is still tier 1. He is balanced tier. Olaf changed quite a bit in Dual Strike. Snow no longer actually reduces movements. Instead, it doubles the fuel costs, which is kind of crap. Snow used to be awesome. Now it's hardly recognizable. Like, doubling fuel cost is nothing. It may sound bad on paper, but honestly, it just requires your opponent to build an APC, and that's how he counters it. I mean, in most cases, he doesn't even need to do that. Like, the double fuel cost doesn't really come into play all that much in player versus player combat, because most units die before they run out of fuel. And, well, luckily, though, Olaf did get a small boost in that he gets a 20% firepower increase whenever Snow is present. However, I know I said I wouldn't take skills into account, but there is one thing that I always face whenever I play other players if we play with skills, and that is that my opponent goes the Icebreaker skill. Which of course Olaf can get too, which, you know, the skill grants you 20% firepower during the snow. But this always happens to me when I play Olaf. They get Icebreaker as a skill, and then whenever I make it snow, I buff the firepower of my enemy, which is really fucking annoying, and it happens all the time. And that's what you're supposed to do. I don't blame them for doing that, but it's a massive weakness with the skill system. However, I would just like to point that out. I know I said I wouldn't bring skills into this, but yeah, just looking at Olaf as a CEO, his usefulness has gone down. Now, he still has a fantastic superpower. Any superpower that globally deals damage is really fucking strong. And of course, we have to also point out that his powers and superpower makes it snow for 2 days, which pretty much means that in a big battle, you can spam your power and actually keep it snowing almost all the time, which sounds really good on paper, but in reality, it's just not really that fantastic. It is also worth noting that he doesn't get weak from rain anymore. I'm at least pretty sure. I'm a little bit uncertain right now, but I am like almost 99% sure that he doesn't take any penalties from rain. But if I'm wrong on that, you can correct me on that. I never said that these tier lists were 100% accurate. So see, he has kind of lost his weakness right there. But at the same time, I kind of feel like Snow used to be incredibly good because it immobilized your enemies and made it impossible for them to move. And that alone is a really strong thing to do, especially against COs that have movement speed increases, because popping the movement speed increases in Snow were usually just resulted in nothing happening. So I kind of feel like Olaf has lost a lot of edge. He's gained a little bit of firepower, but the price he paid for that firepower was pretty steep, in my opinion. And the fuel drain is just not fantastic at all. It's just... draining fuel has never been an issue, at least not for me. It's annoying, that's what it is. It's annoying, it's not good. It of course should be noted that COs that Olaf is very weak against now is Jess, because she has the ability to just instantly refuel her troops, so she doesn't really bother at all about the Snow. She just, boom, turbocharge, all my units have full fuel now. I don't give a shit. So, that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, he is tier 1. In my original tier list, I do believe I said he could be tier 2 in larger maps, but now he is tier 1. He cannot be tier 2. Then we come to Grits. Grit is tier 3, overpowered tier. He is pretty darn scary. He works just like he did in Advanced Wars 2. He has good indirects. That's really how he works. A lot of people think that he deserves to be tier 4, but I strongly disagree with that. I have managed to take games off Grits, but what I will say is that on small closed-off maps, Grit can easily become tier 4 or even tier 5. But when you play against a human, I advise that you play on a semi-large map, or at least a medium-sized map, because small maps aren't balanced, because they are so easy to shut down with indirects, especially if you play on like maps with choke points and shit. Grit becomes impossible to beat because he just sets up a bunch of artillery and he just shoots everything that comes his way. But on large, more open maps, I have taken many games of Grit players simply by spamming recons. Recons are amazing against Grits because they can always find some sort of way behind his lines and start shooting down his rockets and artillery. And if you start to take down a couple of artillery or rockets, Grit falls very quickly. Like, as long as he has his wall of indirects, he seems almost godlike. But I can guarantee you, if you just get a couple recons behind his lines, especially on a map where they are able to do that, he falls pretty fucking quickly. So keep that in mind. But yeah, he's still tier 3 though, because indirects are good and his artillery are shit broken as fuck. So they essentially have 50% increased range. So yeah, anyway, let's continue on to Colin. Oops, sorry. Colin is tier 4, broken tier. Colin is as overpowered as ever in this game. Holy shit, he is good. Fucking hell. He is extremely fucking good. Like, Dual Strike did nothing to nerf this guy, and it should have nerfed this guy. It should have nerfed him hard. Colin has actually gotten buffed, because the little power and superpower in Dual Strike now also grants you 10% extra firepower. And Colin spams his little power a lot. That's how he works. And yeah. I have nothing more to say about Colin. He is fucking broken. He shouldn't even be in the game. Fucking, he's so fucking strong. If you don't know how strong Colin is, you should. That's, like, he pays a fucking 10% firepower reduction to field units at a 20% lower price. And he gets 50% extra income almost every other turn, really, because fucking Gold Rush has 10 stars, or it costs 2 stars. Never use Power of Money unless you're winning the game and you want to humiliate your opponent. That's essentially what that power is there for. Just spam the shit out of your little power and you should be good. Then we come to Sasha, Colin's hot sister. Ah, she's so cute. Sasha is a tier 1 CO, balanced tier. Now, Sasha is amazingly strong in the campaign because she can use her little power to shut down enemy dual strikes, which is ridiculously strong, especially on maps with 2 or 3 or even 3 different teams of allied COs playing against another team of 2 COs. What you essentially do there is you just spam little power and the AI will never be able to use its dual strike, which is fantastic. So Sasha is a fucking MVP in the campaign, I'll tell you that. And when I do my eventual dual strike campaign, you'll see how strong Sasha is there. In a 1 versus 1 player versus player combat, however, she is nothing impressive at all. She hardly matches up to her little brother. Sure, she gets 100 extra income from property, so essentially you can view that as Sasha having 10% more income. And there's a skill in the game that does exactly the same thing, so she gets a free skill, essentially. Her power is kinda garbage in 1 versus 1 combat. Like, yeah, sure, if your enemy has a really strong power, you can kinda shut it down. But you're essentially just cock-blocking your power to cock-block the enemy power. You might as well just play a game without powers in that regard. Her superpower is nothing fantastic. She gets money whenever she does damage, and it can be quite a bit of money too. So, Sasha just has the advantage of just having a little bit more money. But that's all it is, really. She has a little bit more money than her opponent, which is nice, but compared to the broken shit you face in Dual Strike, Sasha just doesn't hold up. Her units aren't any better. There's a little bit more of them, and that's about it. So, she is tier 1. She is balanced tier. Alright. Moving down to Green Earth, we come to Eagle. God, I love his hipster alternative look. It's so fucking sexy. Eagle is tier 2. Yes, he is strong tier in this game. Tier 2. He's moved up from tier 1. He still works pretty much the same way. However, he has gotten a pretty big rework in the little power department. Eagle's little power in Advanced Wars 2 used to be crap. It used to just give him extra firepower and defense on his air units, and you would never want to use it ever, unless it, like, maybe in a few very special circumstances, like, I need to shoot down that transport, so I need the extra firepower boost, like. But now, his Lightning Drive actually allows his units to move again. It's like it was in Advanced Wars 1. He gets an extra turn, but at reduced firepower and defense. And that is broken as fuck, because, of course, the added benefits of an extra turn, even if it is with I can't talk today. Even if it is with weakened units, it is still fucking strong. The ability to move in and then use fucking Lightning Drive to move your units out of anti-air range is ridiculous. And Eagle's units are so strong anyway that the reduced firepower and defense that they gain isn't really that severe. And air units have always been about striking targets that can't strike back. You don't attack fucking anti-air with a bomber if the anti-air can kill your bomber on retaliation. You attack units with your bomber that can't fight back. That's how air units have always worked. So you move in your battlecopters and your bombers, and you kill key units such as rockets, maybe even missiles, and important units that the enemy is trying to protect. You then use Lightning Drive even to inflict even more damage, or simply just to move your air units back again. You can use this sort of as a hit and run tactic to keep your air units safe if your enemy has a lot of anti-air setup, which they usually do against Eagle. Still, Eagle is kind of weak in that your enemy will naturally build past anti-air missiles and maybe even a fighter to counter your units really early on in the match, because they know you'll be spamming battlecopters early game. They know you'll probably build a couple of bombers mid game. So for that reason alone, Eagle is a tricky CO to use because you will be facing anti-air. So what I like to do when I play Eagle is I like to build a lot more tanks than I usually do, because I know I'll be facing anti-air, and I try to use my tanks to take down the anti-air. If you can somehow trick your opponent into building less anti-air, you can get a huge advantage with Eagle, and the addition of his new power, the Lightning Drive, makes me move him up to tier 2. But he is like borderline tier 1. He's still not a very good CO in my opinion. Lightning Strike is still fucking awesome, but it's also very overpriced. And the fact that it costs so much means that you probably won't see many Lightning Strikes over the course of a game. And most games are actually decided before you get in, so at least that's my experience. Moving over to Drake. Drake is still very meh. Drake is still a tier 1 CO. Now, he doesn't have his movement anymore from Advanced Wars 2, and his boats now have 20% increased firepower instead of having 10% increased defense, which is arguably a buff to Drake, but naval units are still crap in Dual Strike. Cruisers received a slight buff in that they no longer take as much damage from air units. Battlecopters, for example, can no longer kill cruisers the way they used to do. They work a little bit more like anti-air in the sea now. But they're still expensive as fuck, although we do have the addition of the Black Boat, which is a very nice unit, and a unit that I like quite a lot, and that I build quite a lot on sea levels. But Drake's Black Boats aren't really any stronger in the fact that he only has increased firepower now, and they don't move faster. Old school Drake would actually have been a lot better in this regard, as his Black Boats would have been harder to kill and faster, but that's no longer the case. So yeah, Drake is just not a good CO. Yeah, sure, his CO, his power deals global damage, and his superpower causes it to rain, and rain still works the same way, unlike snow. And fuel drain is annoying, but not good. But yeah, Drake is an alright CO, but he's still only tier 1, because compared to some of the other shit you face in Dual Strike, he just doesn't hold up. And needless to say, COs like Andy and Hawke, which has the ability to repair, counter Drake pretty hard, because they can just ignore his power and repair instead, which is nice. And of course, Jess, with her ability to refuel, is also nice. And counters Drake quite significantly. And it should also be noted that Drake no longer counters Olaf the way he did, because Olaf is no longer weak in the rain, at least I think. And he still has his passive ability to make it rain a lot more on random weather. So if you play as Drake, you should definitely play with random weather on. And even though I said I wouldn't bring skills into this, giving him the Rain Dance skill, which gives him 20% extra firepower in the rain, is pretty much mandatory. But you should expect your opponents to do the same, so when it starts to rain, they will become stronger as well, so do keep that in mind. At least if they know what they're doing, they should. Then we move over to Jess, and holy fuck did Jess get a massive push in Dual Strike. She has gone from one of the shittiest COs in the game to one of the strongest COs in the game. She is tier 3, overpowered tier. Holy fuck, she's so good in this game now. So, not only did they eliminate the 10% firepower penalty to infantry, so her infantry are fine now, but they fucking increased her firepower of all her vehicles from 10% up to 20%. Jess is so fucking unbelievably strong right now, guys. I played so many games against Jess because one of my friends, the guy I played the most against, he loves Jess. It's his main CO, so he plays Jess a lot. And I gotta tell you, he beats me soundly so many times with Jess. And the only times I'm able to go up against him is when I play tier 3 or stronger CO. Jess is just, like, she always had really fucking good powers. Her power and superpower is immensely strong, because it combines fucking movements with firepower and ammo fuel restore, which is a nice little bonus. But now she also has a ridiculous day-to-day power. 20% extra firepower on your units is ridiculously strong, and it makes it really hard to trade effectively with Jess. Now, the only other CO that has this like passive firepower increase is Max. But against Max, you can be sure you won't see any indirects backing his units up, so you can kind of win. You can kind of trade cost effectively by against Max by setting up a lot of indirects and taking his units down with that. Against Jess, you have no such luxury. Against Jess, you will face rockets, you will face artillery, and not only that, they're 20% better, and even more when she uses her power. And on top of that, you face tanks, you face anti-air, you face vehicles that are stronger than yours, and it's really fucking hard to trade effectively against Jess when she fights at 20% more strength than you. Now, even better, good Jess players will field battlecopters and other air units if they have access to an airport. This is something my friend does a lot, because against Jess you think, haha, well at least Jess is not going to build any air units, so at least I can get an advantage by building battlecopters. Oh no, Jess's battlecopters are only 10% weaker, and in terms of battlecopters, this doesn't really affect them a whole lot. They still do their job really well, and in a battlecopter versus battlecopter engagement, it's still the attacker that wins. The 10% reduced firepower doesn't change this at all. So my friend, when he plays Jess, he fields a lot of battlecopters, and it forces me to build anti-air, and of course which he attacks with his vehicles, and he wins that engagement because he's 20% stronger. And it's just really fucking hard to play against Jess. And of course, when Jess gets her fucking power and superpower, she fucking just demolishes everything. It is so strong. I mean, her superpower gives plus 2%, like plus 2 movement to all her units, and the added firepower increase, and the fuel and ammo restore. It is fucking broken. Jess is almost tier 4. She's among the strongest of the tier 3 sales, in my opinion. She is that fucking good. Right, moving on to Javier. Javier is one of those COs that is entirely dependent on the map you're playing on. Of course, Dual Strike added com towers, which are nice little buildings that increases your firepower by 10% for everyone you control, and the effect stack. Javier is of course a CO that depends entirely on com towers. Now his day-to-day bonus isn't that good. I believe he gets a 20% defense boost against indirects, which is nice, and it gives him an edge against crits, I guess you could say. But, of course, when he captures com towers, he does not only get the 10% firepower boost, he also gets 10% extra defense. And his power and superpower doubles and triples the effects of com towers. Now, if he captures even a single com tower and uses his superpower, his units will be almost invincible, at least 2 indirects. If he captures 2 com towers, I do believe he can become invincible almost merely by using his little power. This is because of the way defense stacks in this game. If you have 90% defense, you take 10% extra. You only take 10% of the damage from enemies. defense stacks in a way that makes it a really good stat, and Javier can actually become quite a cheesy CO. But again, his tier depends on the amount of com towers. If you play on a map without com towers, I'd rate him as a tier 1, one of the weakest COs in the game, because all he gets is a slight defense against indirects, which isn't really that good. However, at the moment where you add a couple of com towers into the picture, he can easily rise in power levels. I dare say his tier is entirely dependent on how many com towers you can reliably secure. I don't really have a number because it's really hard to gauge, but I'd say if you are guaranteed to get at least one com tower, he is probably tier 2. And if you have a guaranteed ability to get at least 2 com towers, he may even move up to tier 4. Because he will be that fucking strong when he pops his superpower. He essentially gets God mode for a turn, and there's only Kanbei who can really do that. And having God mode for one turn in a game such as Advanced Wars, which tilts so quickly in one direction, is really fucking good. So yeah, good with com towers, horrible without com towers. That's how he works. Alright, moving on to Jello combat, actually. Yellow combat. We have Kanbei. Kanbei. He has taken a big nerf in Dual Strike. He's still pretty fucking good, but unlike his 30% powerhouse in Advanced Wars 2, he has now moved down to 20%. He only has 20% increased firepower and defense. His power and superpower are still broken as fuck, but he now is a little bit less ridiculous than he used to be. Kanbei is tier 3. He has moved down one tier. He's no longer on par with Colin. He now joins the rest of the tier 3 gang. However, 20% firepower and defense is still fucking good, even if his units are 20% more expensive. It means his units have more staying power, they're more difficult to kill, and even though they're more expensive, it just seems like they're really fucking cost effective, even with their 20% increased price tag. And of course, if you get the Samurai Spirit, which you definitely should be using a lot, not his little power, don't use that, use Samurai Spirit. Because when you pop Samurai Spirit, your units are essentially invincible for a turn. And that is fucking broken. Your enemy will be an idiot if he attacks you with that thing on, because the increased counterattack damage with the already increased firepower he has will just demolish anything. Your opponent just stops attacking you for a turn. That's how it works. It's like, okay, Samurai Spirit, I guess I'll just rearrange my units this turn and move them back, maybe. I don't know. It's fucking broken. So yeah, Kanbei tier 3 CO. Then we come over to Sonja. And Sonja. She is now tier 2. I feel like Sonja has lost a little bit of her edge in Dual Strike. She no longer has increased counterattack firepower. Instead, how she operates is that she still has her question mark hit points, which is really fucking annoying. But that can be countered by turning animations on, which I personally ban when I play with my friends because we feel like it takes away one of her strengths. And she still, she actually do not have bad luck anymore. It has actually been removed from Dual Strike. You may, like, I'm 99% sure, but I'm not like 100% sure. But I'm pretty sure she no longer has bad luck. But yeah, she lost her counterattack firepower, which is kind of fucking strong. But she still has her extended vision and her hidden hit point intel from her enemy. Now what Sonja instead does is that she reduces the defense of her enemy by 1. Which means that on any encounter that doesn't take place on shoals and roads, she is 10% better. Which is a little bit weird, in my opinion. Her little power and superpower respectively also removes stars by 1 or 2. So when she uses her superpower, she reduces enemy terrain stars by 3. And when she uses her little power, she reduces the enemy terrain stars by 2. So she essentially has just gotten a firepower increase, which is a little bit weird. So it pretty much means that she, funnily enough, counters Lash in a way. Since Lash is all about them firepower stars, or that terrain stars, and you know, they're firepower stars too in Lash's case, but still. So it's kind of funny that she works like that, considering the rivalry she used to have with Lash. But yeah, it pretty much just means that terrain won't benefit you as much against Sonja, and it kind of plays into her gimmick that you can't really hide from Sonja, because if you hide in forest, she's just going to use her power and see through the forests, and your units are going to get killed. So it essentially just means that you can't, like, you play differently against Sonja compared to other COs. Against Sonja, you don't really care if your units are on plains and roads. Like, normally I would never attack from a road, I would attack from plains. Against Sonja, it doesn't really matter, because on plains your units still have 0 defense stars. So you can attack from roads now without having to move your units up on plains just to get that extra 10% firepower increase. If you know she's going to use her superpower, you don't really have to bother taking cover in cities, because she's going to remove that advantage anyway. So essentially, a wise player will know how to play against Sonja and not do the mistakes of, oh, I need to put my unit in a city to protect it. No, she's going to use her superpower this turn, so you can just leave it on the road, you know. So that's essentially how she works, but she is tier 2 now, I feel, because honestly, I kind of liked her increased counterattack damage, and that was actually a big deal for her playstyle. She's still pretty fucking good, but considering that there are so many strong COs in Dual Strike now, since she hasn't changed all that much, she has actually moved down a tier. I do believe I placed her in tier 3 in Advanced Wars too. She just doesn't hold the same oomph as she used to, in my opinion, compared to the rising power level of the Dual Strike COs. But this is actually slightly up for debate. I was actually not sure whether or not I would place her in tier 3 or tier 2, so it is actually a little bit shaky at the point of making this video, and I might correct myself later, but for now, I say she is tier 2. Then we come to Sensei. Sensei is still tier 3, overpowered tier. Now, Sensei's battlecopters have actually taken a huge hit. They're no longer the ridiculous, I think, what, 40 or 50% they used to be. Now they're actually down to... Actually, no. Strike that. His infantry has taken a hit. His battlecopters are as strong as ever, but his infantry has taken a hit. They're no longer 40% better in firepower. They're gone down to 10%. So, Sensei's infantry are a lot weaker now. However, they've taken away his vehicle weakness, and he now only has weaker naval units, which is really, really fucking weird. Like, Sensei used to be bad at tanks. He's no longer bad at tanks. So yeah, they nerfed his infantry, but they buffed his vehicles. So he's essentially the same, in my opinion. And he's still tier 3. He is still fucking horrendously broken. He summons mechs. He has fucking broken battlecopters. Sensei is really hard to play against. Extremely hard to play against, because any COs that spawns mechs, it's a fucking powerhouse. And it's really fucking hard to deal with. So yeah. That's all I really can say about this old man. Then we come to Grimm. Grimm is not very good, in my opinion. He gets 30% extra firepower, 20% less defense. In my opinion, he's just a really... Like, I'm saying unbalanced, not because he's good. It's sort of just like a really shaky CO, because both sides just get a firepower boost. That's really about it. Now, you may think it sounds good to get a 30% firepower increase for a 20% defense increase or decrease, but it's actually not as good as it sounds, because defense is important in this game, and your units will just deteriorate really fucking quickly. And it really makes him a sitting duck for indirects, and it essentially just makes the game more unstable. If you can get a lot of first strikes in, yeah, you can get a nice advantage with Grimm, and his power and superpower just give him a very nice punch. But sadly, because they don't increase his movements, they don't really add a lot to his mobility, and I just find this guy just not being very strong at all. He's okay, but he's very meh. He gets a firepower increase, but at a very severe cost. And I just often find the 20% reduced defense to be a massive detriment. It just makes him really fucking hard to play. Alright, moving on to Black Hole, we have Flak. Flak, of course, is still Flak. He's still tier 1. He's still fucking terrible. He doesn't work exactly like Jugger. I'll talk more about that when we get to Jugger. But yeah, Flak is bad. I think we've established this now. He sucks. Don't play him. Lash. Lash is still tier 3. She is pretty much unchanged in Dual Strike. She is still fucking awesome. She still gets her increased firepower from terrain. Her superpower is still broken. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say about Lash. She is still tier 3. She doesn't really have a weakness, which makes her really fucking good. Again, she may have a slight weakness against Sonja, possibly. Maybe Sonja has a small edge over her, because Sonja can remove her terrain stars, which also removes her firepower. And also makes her superpower less severe. I'm actually not quite sure how her day-to-day power works with Sonja's superpower. Like, if Sonja uses her superpower and Lash uses her superpower, do you first double Lash's terrain stars and then subtract Sonja's defense stars? Or is it the other way around? Does Sonja first deduct her and then Lash doubles the remaining ones? I'm actually not sure. I've never tried. But either way, Sonja has a slight edge, I'd say. But no, Lash is still tier 3. Then we come to Adder. Adder is also unchanged. He is still tier 1. of course, he's still my favorite CO to play in this game. He also has a clone CO, which is a Sack, I think is called, or Cole, I can't remember. It changes depending on the American or European version of the game. But yeah, Adder is tier 1. He is perfectly balanced in my opinion. He just gets movement speed increases, and that's it. Nothing to say about this guy, really. Hawke, still tier 2, still vastly overrated in Dual Strike. People think he's so fucking strong because he has a 10% firepower increase. And yes, it does put him above the rest of the tier 1 gang, but no further than tier 2. His power and superpower are ridiculously overpriced for what they do. And a 10% extra increase in firepower isn't as good as it sounds. Yes, he isn't a strong tier. He is a strong CO. He can take games of anyone, almost. But I still think he's overrated because people seem to praise him as some sort of fucking god. He's not that good. Alright. Then we come to the first clone CO. It's Jugger. I love his alternate skin. It's so fucking good. Jugger is like a more severe or unstable version of Flak. He has the ability to do less damage than Flak, but also the ability to do more damage than Flak. And he also has a more expensive superpower than Flak. That's the difference between him and Flak. Flak is less handicapped by the reduction of firepower, but doesn't always also doesn't hit as hard as Jugger does. So Jugger is actually a CO that's capable of hitting harder than Nell if he gets a lucky blow, but his unlucky blows are also a lot more severe. And as I said, he also has a much more expensive superpower than Flak. And in terms of powers, his powers are also a lot more severe than Flak's. Does more damage than Flak, but also has the ability to do less damage than Flak. So yeah, that's how he works. Then we come to Cole, or Sack. Yes, Sack. He can also be named Cole, depending on the version. But yeah, in this version, he's named Sack. Sack is, of course, viewed by many as a better version of Adder, which I disagree. I think that Sack is actually probably on par with Adder. Now, Sack is another terrain-based CO. Sack gets extra firepower on roads, very similar to Jake. Now, of course, this is problematic because, as with Jake, roads is not something you want your units to be on. Yes, you want to move on roads, but if there's any danger of being attacked on your turn, you should end your movement at least on plains, but preferably in a city or in the forest. Because roads, of course, have 0 defense stars, which means your units are sitting ducks out there. Attacking on a road is dangerous, in my opinion, and it's just not something you want to do unless you can wipe the unit out completely. So, again, when I play Sack, I often find myself in a situation that, hey, I'd like to not end my movement on... I like to, like, stay on this base, but if I stay on this base, then I don't get the extra firepower. And again, that makes him kind of hard to play. But again, he works very much like Adder does, but instead of having a 2-cost little power and a 3-cost superpower, he has a 3-cost little power and a 2-cost superpower, which is way worse in my opinion. Because with Adder, you want to spam your little power all the time. It's much better than spamming your superpower. With Sack, his little power costs 3 stars. Of course, in the end, his superpower is as expensive as Adder's because they're both at 5 stars. But the fact that his little power is 3 stars compared to Adder's 2 stars makes him worse, in my opinion, because he can spam his little power less frequently. And you want to spam your little power frequently, especially in Dual Strike, where you get the 10% extra firepower. So yeah, Sack is a tier 1 CO. I'm not sure if I said that, but he's a tier 1. I'm not sure if I said what Jugger was, but he's also tier 1. Tier 1, both of them. Then we come to the horribly overpowered Kanbei. She is a tier 3 CO. Yes, she is tier 3. Kanbei is perhaps one of the... Yeah, she is, like, aside from Funbolt, she is the strongest black hole CO in the game. Kanbei gets a 30 whooping% firepower increase on properties on a day-to-day basis. Not 10% like her other terrain-based COs. No, 30%. It's absolutely ridiculous. On a city, her units have fucking 30% firepower and 30% extra defense. She's like old school Kanbei on properties. She's ridiculous. She also has the best little power in the game, Urban Blight. Deals 3 damage to all enemy units on properties, regardless of what kind of properties they're on. It's absolutely horrendous. Like, you don't want to use her superpower. She's just like Colin. Her superpower sucks. Yeah, she gets a little bit extra firepower depending on her properties. Don't use it. It sucks. Her little power is beyond broken. It drains repair money from the AI and still leaves them at 9 hit points, even though they're recently deployed. It interrupt caps. That is horribly overpowered. Like, oh no, your enemy is capturing your cities? Boom! Urban Blight, baby! No longer they do. Now you can go and take them back. Kanbei is just really fucking hard to play against. She is borderline tier 4, But she can't be, because she can't honestly take games off Colin and the other CO in that tier, which I will talk about. But she is one of the strongest tier 3 COs. She is one of the few tier 3 COs who is arguably pretty capable of standing up against Jess, in my opinion. The most balanced games I've had against Jess, I've had with Candy. And the... she just drains her enemies' money like fucking... because the Urban Blight is so cheap, I think it's 3 stars. She can just spam it over and over again, and your opponent just will run out of cash. Because repairs are so expensive. She's even better against Rachel, because Rachel repairs the full 3 hit points due to her day-to-day power. And that just causes her to go completely broke. And it's really fucking good, like, especially if your opponent builds a lot of expensive units. So yeah, Candy tier 3. Then we come to the last bad guy. It's Funbolt, and he's not quite as awesome as Sturm. He doesn't really hold a candle to Hachi, but he is still a tier 4 CO. He's tier 4 broken tier. The only CO to join Colin in that tier. He's actually a little bit stronger than Colin. I've taken games of Colin a lot with Funbolt, but it's been pretty even. So Colin can definitely give this old fucker a run for his money. But Funbolt is pretty fucking good. Of course, his day-to-day firepower and defense is only 10%, but that 10% extra defense is pretty fucking strong. Not a lot of COs have that. And like, it's nowhere compared to Storm's broken 20%, but a 10% increase in firepower and defense is pretty fucking good. It makes him a lot more tough to trade against than you'd think. But of course, his giant trump card is his superpower. Of course, it's a missile that does 3 hit point damage, but the stun is fantastic. Like, the stun just puts, like, the ability to just stun a large portion of the enemy army for a single turn and deal some damage to them. Like, it's not as strong as the Meteor Strike in my opinion, because the Meteor Strike, at least, you know, it renders them probably useless, whereas this one only renders them useless for 1 turn. But still, in a game like Advanced Wars, where each turn is so goddamn crucial, the Ex Machina is just amazing. And I don't know what to say about it, really. It is a really fucking strong power. And when it goes off, you pretty much have a window of opportunity to win the game. So the only hope to defeating Funbolt is to decide the game before that thing comes in, which can be really hard, because he's so good on his day-to-day. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is my tier lists. Let me hear in the comment section what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there any tiers or any other COs you'd place in any other tiers, so to say? I'd like to hear your opinions on this. Of course, again, I'd like to repeat that I'm not saying this is 100% correct. This is built on my experiences, and I haven't played Dual Strike nearly as much as I played Advanced Wars 2. And yeah, that's really all I can say about the matter. I hope you guys will enjoy this tier list nevertheless. As always, please consider leaving a like and a comment if you enjoyed this video. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!